But when I had the opportunity to speak, I said what I thought needed to be said in that moment. But after I said it, I could immediately tell that what I said didn't really land with the room.
Welcome to the Climb Podcast, where we are diving into taboo topics and redefining the rules for women of color leaders. Get ready as we share the stories and amplify the voices of extraordinary women of color, from navigating workplace challenges to celebrating triumphs. On this podcast, we've got you covered. So buckle up and join us as we embark on today's empowering journey.
That what I said didn't really land with the room. Like it didn't get the response I was expecting. I was expecting a like, oh dag, she's smart, or like a, okay, I see what you just said. I got none of that, right? I got no engagement, no follow-up, and barely an acknowledgement that I said something. Welcome to the Climb Podcast, where we empower women of color in the pursuit of leadership roles. I'm your host, Felicia Smith, the founder of The Climb, a nonprofit that is dedicated to advancing women of color in leadership and management positions. Each week on this podcast, we pull back the curtain on the workplace realities we navigate, offering honest conversation and practical feedback on how you build confidence in your own voice and keep climbing without doing it alone. Last week, we talked about something real. We talked about getting to the table, not just wanting it, not just working for it, but actually being there. And for many of us, that's a goal, right? Just give me the opportunity, let me in the room. I deserve to be at the table. But the part that nobody really, again, prepares you for, again, is what happens when you're at the table and what happens when you open your mouth to contribute to said table. Because getting to the table is one thing, but when you're there, what you say when you're there matters because it shapes how people see you moving forward. And if we're real, for women of color, the stakes are different. They're higher because studies show that we are 3 to 4 times more likely to experience dismissive behaviors in the workplace, not because we're not prepared, not because we don't know our stuff, but because of how our voice is received. And I'll be honest, some of that is indicative of the space, and some of that is just some other stuff. We're going to talk about it, but not in this conversation. How about that? So today's conversation is not just about communication. It's about intentional communication, about how you move and all the things that you do. Because every time you speak, you are shaping perception, establishing credibility, and defining your presence. And I know for some people that feels icky because they're like, hey, I'm being judged by somebody else's perception or what they feel about me. And that's not really true. And that's fair. It does feel icky. But again, as we said at last week's podcast at the end, you're at somebody else's table. You're going to have to play by somebody else's rules in some of these instances, right? Okay, so by the end of the episode, I really want you to walk away with some usable tools, right? A framework, things that you can use that will help you the very next time that you're in the room. So today's topic is, what did you say? How to get your point across. That's our topic. What did you say? How to get your point across. And that's often the internal dialogue that I have if I'm at the table with somebody and I'm like, what did they just say? I really don't know, like, what just happened, right? So let's just dive right into our first segment, which is somebody should have told me. And I'm going to go with someone should have told me the weight and power, not in just how I speak at that table, but how I communicate and making sure that it is shaped in a way that there's a goal and objective in mind, right? I remember like one of my first times, in a meeting and preparing for a presentation, of course I was ready, I was prepared, I felt knowledgeable. But when I had the opportunity to speak, I said what I thought needed to be said, right, in that moment. But after I said it, I could immediately tell that what I said didn't really land with the room. Like it didn't get the response I was expecting. I was expecting a like, oh dag, she's smarter, like a okay, I see what you just said. I got none of that, right? I got no engagement, no follow-up, and barely an acknowledgement that I said something. And I remember feeling like, well, dag, did I say something wrong? Like, did I miss something? And the truth was, it wasn't necessarily that what I said was wrong. It was that I didn't have intention behind my words and I was communicating, but I didn't have a strategy for what I was saying, how I wanted to come across, all the things. And what I hadn't thought about was what was the point that I wanted or I needed them to walk away with, right? So instead of feeling like I just need to respond and say something, what do I want them to walk away with from what I say? And how would that particular message land in the room that I was in, right? Was I contributing to the conversation or was I just speaking because someone told me when I'm at the table I need to speak or when I'm in a meeting I need to speak, right? And no one talks about that part, the importance of not just communicating or speaking, but am I really contributing and moving the conversation forward? And so we're going to talk a little bit about communication that's not casual, communication that's calculated, strategic, and intentional, right? So remember, the stat says that 3 to 4 times we can be dismissed as women of color. That's what we talked about. So that means that we cannot afford to walk into rooms and just wing it. Like just, I'm just going to say a little something, something. No, you can't do that because your voice has to carry weight. It has to carry intention. And when I learned that I needed to think before I went in a meeting about what I wanted to say and how I wanted to land and how I wanted the audience to perceive it, the reaction, I was about to say the perception, the reaction that I got changed everything. Okay, so let's go on the truth is, the whole truth and nothing but the truth about everything we know about what it means to communicate so that no one's saying at the table, what did you say? And you're not questioning whether or not you got your point across. So we often think if we say enough, they'll see us. If I contribute more, they'll recognize me. But here's the thing, over communicating is not the same thing as effective communication. And silence is not always the problem either. So we've been taught, we just need to say something. But that's not the issue. Sometimes the issue, and more, I would say more times often than not when you're speaking, it's speaking without a purpose. Because every time you speak, whether you like it or not, every time you speak, you are being assessed, whether the person is doing it consciously or unconsciously or subconsciously. I can't remember which word it is, y'all. Let's just be honest. So they're asking themselves the question, does she bring clarity? Does she move the conversation forward? Does she understand the big picture? Those are the kind of questions that when you speak, people are assessing. I've been in several conversations when someone has spoken up and they've said something and I'm like, what conversation were you sitting in? Because I don't even know what you just said even fit into the grand scheme of everything we're talking about. And so sometimes you're just trying to fill the space or just speak to be a part of the conversation. And then you say something off key. It's like, where are you? Land, you're all in the clouds. So you just don't want to speak just because, right? Because whether they say it out loud or not, they're performing a perception of you. They're forming a perception of you. And so this isn't about speaking more. This is about speaking better. And I'm not talking about your, pronunciation. It's about the intentionality behind what you said. So I want to talk to you a little bit about a framework that I've created or framework that I have been mulling around. I won't say I've created, I've been thinking about it. And it's really called what I'm calling the table talk framework, right? And it's really built around three things. And y'all know from this season of podcast, I've been really loving my three things. I think it's easy. You can remember it. So whether you're driving or not, it'll be in the notes. Jot down the three things.
If you are serious about your next level, the room you're in matters. The Climb Impact Brunch is bringing together women who are building,
leading and navigating what's next. This is where real conversations happen, connections are made, and opportunities start. And it's all in support of a fundraising initiative, creating leadership access for the next generation. Your seat helps provide a leadership experience for 30 young women at no cost to them. The question isn't if you should be in the rooms, it's why you wouldn't be. So join us at the Harborside Hotel in Oxon Hill, Maryland on Sunday, April 26th at 11 a.m. Seats are limited. Secure yours now. Okay, number one, you have to know when to speak. Not every moment requires your voice, right? And that feels uncomfortable sometimes because you feel like you should be saying something, you should be doing something, especially when you're trying to prove that you belong, which you don't have to do that, but sometimes you do. I don't know. It's nuance. We'll get there. Different podcast. But the question that you need to ask yourself before you speak is, does my input move this conversation forward? Does my input move this conversation forward? Because when you speak, you should be bringing clarity. You can potentially shift a direction. And when you're speaking, you should be adding insight that no one else has offered, not just speaking to prove that you're right or that you're there. Because people don't remember how many times you spoke, they remember what mattered when you did. I love that. People don't remember how many times you spoke, they remembered what you said that mattered when you did. So it's all about what you say and not how much you speak up. Number two, how to speak. And this is where a lot of people will lose a room or lose a discussion. You're over explaining. You're circling the point. You're burying the message. And in doing so, you lose the impact. So you get so deep into your explanation that you miss the bottom line up front. And so now the person is in their brain going in circles and they have literally missed what you have said because it's taken you so long to get there. So you have to filter yourself. And here's the filter. Can I say this clearly in 1 to 2 sentences? Right? Not a paragraph, not 5 sentences. Start with your main point and then support it if it's needed. No other way around. Main point, support. Keep it sharp, keep it brief. If people have questions, they will ask you more questions. But when you feel like you need to be comprehensive on the front end, you will lose the audience every time. I guarantee it, right? Because clarity builds confidence, and confidence builds credibility. Clarity builds confidence, and confidence builds credibility. So don't feel like you got to say 1,000 words if you can say it in 5. And I've seen this happen so many times where I'm like, get to the point. Or they have said to a 2-page essay and all they really needed was the first paragraph. And in the first paragraph, I could have gotten it. But because you said 2 pages essay, now I've lost the plot. Now I am all the way on, I'm hungry, what time is lunch? Okay. And then the final number 3 is what to say, right? Everything does not require your opinion. Everything is not yours to carry. And I think sometimes we get in this trap of not knowing what hill to die on. And that's a metaphor, meaning what's the thing that we need to carry because it's super important to us, and what things is not my monkey, not my show, not my fight. Now, before anybody get offended, that's a book. Not my monkey, not my show is a book. I'm not being offensive. Let me just go ahead and say that. But everything is not your fight. So you have to ask yourself, is this aligned with my expertise or the goal of this conversation? If it's not, just speak on what you know, what's important to you. Speak on what you observe and speak on what you know will add value. Don't feel like you got to fill the space. Don't feel like over explaining your worth or trying to let everybody know that you're supposed to be there, and then feeling like you have to respond to everything so that people can know that you're smart. Because presence is not volume, it's alignment. How are you aligned to the conversation? So those are the 3 things, right? You have to know what to say. Okay. Then you have to know how to speak. And then the first one that we discussed is you need to know when to speak. So I'll say it again. 1 is when to speak. 2 is how to speak. And 3 is what to say. Thinking about all those 3 in context is going to be super helpful to help you to understand how to navigate, right? And so let's go ahead and dive into our final segment, which is another wrong mended. And I'm going to give you my final practical advice that you need and something that you can actually use this week as you're beginning to engage again with your teams or with other leaders. Number 1, pause before you speak. I had a really wise mentor who I love to death, who's still my mentor, who said he had a little sticky at his desk that would just say, be quiet first, because he's giving himself the moment to pause and ask the question, do I have something of value to say? And then what's my point? Lead with the headline. Don't build it up. Start with the headline. And then watch the room. We talked a lot about this last episode, so I won't dive all the way in, but I'll just say, how are people engaging? Are they confused? And adjust in real time. You have to be agile enough to be able to see the room and make the adjustments in real time. Don't chase every moment. Not every silence filler is yours, as we said before. And practice outside the room. It's okay to practice before you go in. Even till this day, I still practice. Like if I know I'm going into a discussion and there's certain things that I want to get out, and I can often be a fast talker, I will give myself a dry run, because actually doing the dry run helps me to become clear on exactly how I want to give the message. Because the way you think is not always the way you communicate. So if you're just kind of mulling it in your head and then your first time saying it's when you get to the meeting or to the podium, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm a living witness, right? So practice making your thoughts concise before you get to the table if you're a person who's very verbose, because this is a skill. Like anything else, it gets better with time and intention. Time and intention. So I'm going to leave you with this. I'll call it thought. The next time you're in a meeting, you're at the table, you're presenting, you're a part of a discussion, I don't want you thinking about how much can I say. I want you to be thinking about, what do I want them to remember? Because that's what matters. Not the number of words, not how long you spoke, but whether your message landed. Remember the stat, 3 to 4 times more likely to be dismissed. Your intentional voice helps to shape the perception that you want. Not being louder, but being undeniable, right? Because your voice is powerful. You know that, I know that. But your intentional voice, what about that? Make sure you're using your intentional voice so that you can shift rooms, that you can build your presence, and that you can see the changes you want and how people respond to your communication. That's the pod, y'all. If you know someone who can use this podcast, who may be struggling with how to get their message to land at whatever table they're sitting at, whatever meeting, share this with them. Ask them to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube or whatever platform that they actually listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep climbing, keep striving, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into the Climb Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on wherever you listen to podcasts. For updates and behind-the-scenes content, make sure you're following us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Join the Climb. Until next time, keep climbing and keep thriving, sis. See you next episode.